Hello, I'm Christina with The Turned Leg, and I've had a booth for over 10 years in an antique mall. And over that time, I've grown my space and I've learned a lot of things. I mean, you can't go to school to become a booth owner, an antique booth owner. I went to school to become a middle school science teacher. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up finding out I loved being a booth owner, and I was able to retire early and do what I love full time. Over the years, I've had a lot of help from other booth owners, and I also have a private booth owners business group on Facebook that I've had for a couple of years now. Over the years, I've learned a lot of things, but I think I've really narrowed down the number one reason why booth owners are not successful. And although it's two words, it's kind of one big overarching topic. And it really deals with fear and overwhelm. And if you've been a booth owner for a while, you're like, I'm not scared, I'm not overwhelmed. So let me kind of explain. I think this concept of fear and overwhelm applies to the newbies and to the people who have been dealers for a while. And maybe you're even going to realize that it might be preventing you from being the best you can be too. When I'm talking about fear, I'm really talking about overthinking things, not necessarily being scared to death. Although I think new booth owners, there's a lot of that. Like, well, what if, I'm going to make a mistake and oh my goodness, and I'm scared and what will people think? There's a lot of that with new booth owners, but I think fear really is second guessing and overthinking. Thinking about booth displays, thinking about what should I buy, what should I pay for it, what should I charge, what should the price be, where should I put it, is it gonna sell, is it trending now? A lot of times this fear that builds up in booth owners can absolutely paralyze you to the point where you're stuck in your head. You're not going to be doing the things you need to do to move your business forward. Overwhelm kind of goes along with that. Sometimes you're just not sure of the next step. When you don't have good systems in place, things are going to pile up, and then that's going to leave you with that feeling of overwhelm. Like, I have stuff everywhere, I don't know what to do, I've just brought in more items, I need to price them, but then there's too much. And sometimes that will also prevent you from being successful. Let me talk about this fear and overwhelm and give you lots of examples. And maybe you'll be able to identify one area that you're like, oh yeah, this is affecting my business. Even for myself, there are so many times when I'm like, Christina, you just got to get over it and you got to just keep going. Because you are experiencing the fear and overwhelm. And it is just not good for you and your business. One of the things that can definitely cause fear and overwhelm is inventory. As a new booth owner, I know one of my big struggles was like, I just don't have this inventory. I would listen to all these other dealers talking about all their excess inventory, and I'm like, listen, I'm on the struggle bus daily. Like, I'm out there hunting because I just don't have anything. Like, if something sells, I'm like, what? I need more? I have no idea where I'm going to get it. So if you're a new booth owner, maybe the fear and the overwhelm is all about getting enough inventory. If you've been a dealer for a while, I bet your fear and overwhelm might be from too much inventory. I mean, do you have the death pile? Do you have that stuff that you just haven't fixed or haven't brought into your booth quite yet? I mean, so many dealers that I know, have so much inventory and it's just sitting there. And I think a lot of times the easiest thing to do is like close the door, close that garage door. We don't want to look at all that inventory, or put it somewhere else that you're just not going to see it because it's too overwhelming a task. In my booth owners business group, we deal a lot with death piles and inventory overwhelm. I've also made videos here on this page. I'll put a link to one here. Inventory overwhelm and fear is a thing, and many booth owners are experiencing it. Kind of going hand in hand with inventory is processing. whether you're new or you've been doing this for a while. I think one of the hidden secrets of antique booth dealers or vintage booth dealers are just the amount of hours that we spend processing items. I mean, going and finding them and buying them, that's the fun part. But then when you get home and you have to wash and you have to take off the price tags and you have to find out how much you're going to sell them for, and you got to clean them and you got to do the minor repairs, sometimes that becomes just overwhelming and people just kind of put it, okay, I'll do it another time. I'll do it later. I can't. So this is when having some sort of a plan in place for tackling all of your inventory as it comes in your house is so very important. I've talked here before. One of the things I do is I kind of have a hidden rule that my processing will happen usually within 24 hours, but I've given myself the grace of up to a week if needed, but usually within 24 hours. Whatever I bring in, no matter how much, no matter if I've gone on like a week-long thrifting adventure, I need to process that stuff and get it out of my house. One, I have a very small house. So, I mean, I do have some spots I could put it where I couldn't find it and it probably wouldn't be my way, like closets and things like that. But one of the things I do to make sure that this happens, and this is part of my strategy as a booth owner, is I will leave it in an obvious spot, literally my kitchen table or like in my kitchen. And because everything's really small, you know, I'm stumbling over it constantly. And eventually it's like, oh my gosh, I try to deal with it as quick as possible to get it out of my house so I can get my house back to myself. But inventory and processing, huge overwhelm for new dealers because they might not really have realized all the work they needed to do for processing. And also for the people that have been doing this a long time. The shopping is the high, right? The processing, not so much. Another problem area can be displays, kind of thinking about how am I going to organize stuff? How am I going to put it into my booth? Maybe you start overthinking things and it's just so much in your head. You're running it through. That's not going to work. Well, maybe I should do this. Well, that's not going to work. And as you're doing that, you're just not doing anything for your business. You're overthinking it. It's all in your head. Or maybe you're kind of scared of your ideas of displays. Maybe you got some really cool stuff, but you've never seen it before in an antique booth. And you've got a wild idea about how you're going to display it, but you're like, can I really do that at my antique mall? I mean, like, no one's ever done that. So there's a lot of fear and overwhelm that definitely occurs with displays and putting them together. And I think part of it also comes with there are people that are so afraid of breaking away from what everyone else in their mall or everything else they've seen on Pinterest or what everyone else is doing. And that leads me to my next topic, which is really your brand or your style. I know when you think of branding, like you think of like a logo or something like that, right? As a booth owner, like what you have in your space, I mean, your brand could be flea market style, but you're going to get flea market prices. So I would hope that, you know, you are actively thinking about things that you love and that you want to, you know, find new homes and share with other people how cool these things are. And I will also say it's very advantageous for you to follow your own heart in that respect. We found out in the Booth Owners Business Group, I mean, so many people have said, well, that stuff sold really well. And I'm like, well, why do you think that is? We find out those are the things they like totally love. And I think when you really love something, you're going to display it better. You're going to know more about pricing. You're going to, in your display, kind of give people ideas of how it can look in their home. You're probably going to promote it better. And it's going to sell better. And it's just going to look better because your love of that item or that piece is really going to shine through on all things. And that's going to lead to sales. Second guessing your brand or doing things just because you think everyone else is doing it can be so harmful. One thing I've decided on in my booth, and you've probably heard me talking about it here, is I'm not carrying children's stuff anymore. Nothing against kids, nothing against children's stuff, toys, furniture, books. I find a lot of them at great prices, but when I get to my booth with them, I have a hard time with like, how do I stage it? I never really know what to do with them too much in my display. And I know that sounds funny, like it's a kid's item, so it just doesn't come natural. And I've decided, well, you know what it is? It's not something that makes my heart happy. When I'm putting together my booth displays, I know what I love. You know, I love the salvage, and I love the furniture, and I love the wood pieces, and I love the quirky, and I love color, and I love things that are handmade. So what I've decided to do, and it sounds kind of drastic, is like, I'm done. I'm not doing that. It doesn't fit my brand anymore. I'm going to put in my booth things that make me happy, things that make my heart happy, and things that I get excited about, because then all the other steps in building your booth space, in sharing it on social media, they're all going to come naturally. So finding your style, I think, as a booth owner is really an important step to getting over that overwhelm and that fear that you have, because you don't have to be like everybody else. And we will talk more about steps to overcome all these in great detail, so stay tuned. Another area that causes people a lot of fear and overwhelm, and I think to the extent where they just won't even do it, is social media. One of the things I have to say is having a business page on social media, it's free advertising. And unless it's just completely a hobby that you're doing as a dealer, if this is really a side gig for income, or maybe you want it to be your full-time job, you want to leave your other job that you're at, I think social media is key, no matter how you feel about it, and it's free advertising. You'd be a fool not to just do some of the basic things for social media, but so many people are overwhelmed. They don't know where, they don't know how, they don't know if they're doing it right, they don't know what they should do, they don't know what they should post, they're afraid of what people are going to see, what are they going to think, and once again, that is stopping them from having the business that they should. Now, if I don't give you enough information about building your antique booth or your vintage booth business on social media, I do have a video here that you can check out too. Another area I think that is key with fear and overwhelm is the whole bookkeeping side of things, the whole accounting and keeping track, and should I be keeping track of every piece of inventory and what I paid for it and what I sell it for, and all the receipts, and how do I do. A lot of people who are antique booth owners, some are absolutely fabulous in this area, but there are quite a few that are creatives that their head is just not around the numbers, and they just they've never felt secure with numbers. And so now they're all excited about the displays and the making things look pretty and maybe even the shopping, but the numbers are not so much. And that's something, once again, where you need to have some systems in place to combat that so you can be a successful booth owner. Going forward, because I want all of you, maybe did you recognize yourself in any of those areas of fear and overwhelmed? Maybe in inventory, maybe in the processing, maybe in booth displays, social media, accounting, any of those areas. Do you feel that you have some fear, or maybe you're overthinking things and you're not really doing what you need to do to get to the next step? Or maybe you're just scared to death of what people will think, and that's why you're not doing what you need to do to get to the next step. Maybe you also are experiencing overwhelm in some of those areas where you just don't know what direction to turn. You don't know who to ask. You really just want to hide it and not deal with it right now because you're overwhelmed by it. And unfortunately, if you don't deal with the overwhelm, if you don't have the systems in place, it's going to pile up and the problems are just going to get worse. Here are my tips for battling fear and overwhelm as a booth owner. One thing I will say is I am surprised how many hats I wear as a booth owner. And by that I mean I have learned how to do, there's a lot of things I kind of planned on learning how to do as a booth owner, how to make a pretty display and what hooks are going to hang certain things to make them pretty, all about different items, maybe finding and sourcing. I planned on that stuff. The stuff I really didn't plan is I didn't realize I'd have to learn how to do a lot of the repairs and carpentry and basic rewiring. I also now have an online store and social media. I mean, there's learning HTML, and there's just a ton of stuff. There's shipping, there's packaging, there's email marketing, there's YouTube, and there's all of you. It is a lot, and I never thought I'd need to know all of those things. I was just going to have a little booth in an antique mall and sell a little bit of paint, and then just save all my curbside treasures and my junk and find new homes for them. That was the plan. I didn't really plan on all this other stuff. And depending on the scale of your business, you might have more or less hats than what I've talked about. The good news is this: everything is figure outable. I mean, you're here on YouTube, right? Because you want to figure out and learn more stuff. And it's so nice. I use YouTube for so many things, because before, antique booth owner, that was not like an easy career choice. There weren't many of us that, went to career days or anything and shared this knowledge. So finding out some of the answers to our unusual questions was pretty difficult. And we need to know so many things. So everything is figure outable. That's one thing that has really calmed me down. Like, I will Google things. I will go on YouTube. I might even ask ChatGPT a question or two and then fact check it. But no, seriously, you can find out a lot of stuff, and that can be a relief. Google Lens has made it so nice for resellers just to at least identify the piece. So many times you're like, what the heck is that? And then, oh yeah, like my last thrifting trip where I found the aerosol hairspray container. I wouldn't have known what that was. And I also, I knew it was cool, but I might not have gotten it, and I might not have known also how much it was worth. Like, it gives you a general idea. You got to be careful with that, but it gives you a general idea. That's the good news. Hopefully, if you're stuck, you can use those resources. The other thing is, you don't have to be an expert in everything right away. Pick and choose, learn as you go. Even when I started with social media, like, I picked one thing. Like, I picked Facebook first, and then I added on Instagram. And then even with what you're doing as a booth owner, how you're organizing stuff, you don't have to do it all at once. Your booth, your displays, find one thing you need some help with and work on that. And then maybe pick up another thing. Like, I got those lamps in the basement, they need to be rewired. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that. But don't fall into the overwhelm where you have a million things to do. You need to pick what you need to work on, and you need to start tackling it. Because the more you just leave things and let things go, the more fear and overwhelm are going to creep in. And really what it gets down to it is this whole fear and overwhelm causes people to kind of be trapped in their head. They get these negative thought cycles going, like, I can't do that. I can't figure it out. What am I going to do? Everyone's going to hate me. It's not going to work. I'm going to have so much junk. I'm then going to have to get a storage unit, whatever. It keeps cycling in your brain, and you keep thinking about it. And if there's no action, it's only going to get worse. One of the sayings that I like is one I learned from Jamie Ray Vintage. And she always says, done is better than perfect. And I think it's something as a booth owner we need to keep in mind. You just need to have action. As a booth owner, you need to keep moving forward. The former science teacher. So like Newton's laws of motion, right? An object in motion continues in motion. An object at rest stays at rest. Paraphrasing a little bit there. But yeah, and that is so true as a small business owner. Even if we wake up and say, okay, today, 5 minutes in my business, I'm just going to do 5 minutes of sorting that desk pile, or 5 minutes of processing the inventory, or 5 minutes of dusting in my booth. Whatever you are doing, just be the object in motion. Don't be overthinking it. Don't be drawing more scale models or writing more to-do lists. You just need to start. Because if you're not the object in motion, you'll be the object at rest, and that is not going to help you in your business. And another piece of advice is you really need to find your way of doing things. I just mentioned how you can go and get information from YouTube and Google and even other booth owners. But what I've found is that it's not one size fits all for processing. Some of you might think I'm absolutely crazy for putting them all on my kitchen table or in my kitchen. What? She does what? I have a shelf. And maybe you're telling me about the shelf you have and how you process from top to bottom or whatever. But it's not going to work. Everybody's way of doing it is not going to be perfect for everyone else. You have to find your system, and you have to find what works, no matter how silly it may be. And that's what you need to stick with. And don't get back in your head and oh my gosh, well, I'm not putting my stuff all on the shelf, and I'm not processing it in order, and I didn't do the glassware first, or because so-and-so does it that way. No. You do what works for you. As long as you're getting the things done you need to have done in your business, it's a good thing. The whole concept of not being like everybody else, I think it really needs to be said here. I hear so many booth owners that try to emulate certain people. Maybe they see on YouTube, maybe they see in their antique malls, maybe they've seen in Pinterest, and they want to do that booth. They've pinned that board and they want that booth. The thing is that antique malls are not going to be really successful if everyone's booth is a perfect clone of everybody else's, at least in my opinion. I think, variety is the spice of life. And I think the more memorable booths are those booths where you're like, wow, that's kind of cool. And that's kind of different, I know my booth, if you look at it, it might not appeal to everybody. I like to every once in a while hang out in my booth, and not on purpose. Usually I'm doing something, but I listen to what customers say when they come into my booth. And these two ladies came into my booth, and I was on the other side of the wall from them, and they were talking about, oh my gosh, there's just so many colors everywhere and patterns. It's just, I like a beige house, pretty much was what they were saying. Totally paraphrasing what they're saying, but it was too much color for them. And they thought I was a little gaudy. And you know what? I didn't have my feelings hurt on the other side of the wall. I wasn't crying. I was seriously celebrating because, maybe I'm a bit much for people. I like color. I'm not going to have an all white booth. It's not my style. You can, and that's totally fine. And no judgment, but I think you need to embrace who you are, follow your style, and don't try to be like everyone else. I think it's setting yourself up for failure if you're having a booth that is the booth you think you should have. I hope you're following me on that. And one strategy that we use in my booth owners business group is to kind of find your style, is you can go to Pinterest and just start pinning pictures. Now, it's kind of hard in the beginning. And it doesn't matter. They can be food pictures, they can be vintage pictures, they can be dress pictures, they can be art pictures, they can be anything. It's kind of hard in the beginning because now Pinterest has all that AI technology in there. And so it's trying to give you more of what you've pinned in the past, which might not have been your style. Remember, you want to pin what you really love. Maybe it's just flowers, but don't think about it. Maybe resort your Pinterest page. Maybe search just home decor or something real general, or house or whatever, and then just start pinning. And the more you do it, you're going to really see maybe some new things developing. And I would say do it for a while. Create maybe a secret board that no one else can see. Do it for a while and see what you get. And I think it's going to give you some hints on your style. And maybe it'll give you some hints about, what your booth should be more like. Maybe you do all this pinning and you're like, I don't like flowers. No, like me with kids stuff, Or I really like color and my booth is all blue and white, and that's not very colorful. So it's really important to not pretend to be a booth owner, to really be the type of booth owner you want to be. And I'm sure if you follow anyone on social media, you probably follow those people not because they're carbon clones of everyone else, but because they have a unique style that is just different, and it's a breath of fresh air. So something to think about. Don't be like everyone else. Be you, embrace what works for you. Another thing I want to talk about is as you're dealing with fear and overwhelm, it's going to be uncomfortable. I can't sugarcoat it. Owning a small business is not easy. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to feel that fear creeping up, or that overwhelm creeping up, or you're going to hear there's no way you can do that in the back of your head. All of that stuff is going to happen. And I almost think that's when the magic happens now. I've been doing this for a while, and it would stop me in my tracks. And there were so many times I'd have to wait till someone like gave me the nudge. Like, I'm kind of scared. I'm thinking about, going to a bigger booth. Oh my gosh. And I don't know if I can make my rent. And I don't know if I can, and someone's like, oh, you can do it. Or what, you needed a little like nudge to go on to the next step. And then there was even me thinking about doing a booth owners business group. And finally I got some advice from a mentor, like, yeah, you need to do it. And now I realize the more and more this has come up, the more and more I, kind of get to a stopping spot, I'm now able to recognize it. And I'm also able to recognize that fear and that overwhelm is telling you that is the next thing you need to do. I mean, in your gut, if you take a second to really listen to yourself, you might be scared out of your mind, but you still want to do it. It's the right thing to do. It makes sense, that it's perfect. I mean, me doing lives, me doing this, doing booths and getting a bigger booth, selling online, all of these things I was horribly scared of. And what if I would have let the fear and overwhelm win? I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here to talk to you. You see, it is so important. If you don't overcome these things and do what you need to do, then like the long range plans might be blown up. Like you might have needed to do that so you could help people in the future, or so you could do this and this. It's all interconnected. And I think it's just so important. The next time you feel that fear and overwhelm about something, and it's the next thing you should do, just go, I know it's going to be uncomfortable, but that's because something good is coming. The last thing I want to talk about with fear and overwhelm that will help combat all of this, and I've kind of touched on it, is you need to find some friends, especially business friends, especially other booth owners. Maybe they're at your antique mall. Do you have like a little gathering area for antique dealers, like a little table or something where there's coffee? That would be a good place to hang out, especially if you're a new booth owner. You need to start talking to people. There'll be some that maybe they don't want to share or whatever, or they're too busy, and that's fine. But you're going to find people who will want to help you. I wouldn't be where I am today without all of the fabulous antique dealers that have helped me along the way. And I am so appreciative. But I'm also happy that I asked questions and that I talked to them. Even when I was first deciding on my antique booth, I contacted some of the dealers in the mall. They weren't in the booth, but they had cards. And I sent them an email like, I'm thinking about getting into this mall. What do you think? Do you like it? Can you give me any hints? And that was so beneficial. So if you can make some booth owner business friends, it's a really good idea. Even if you've been in the business for a long time, I think it's just so beneficial. I don't think our spouses or family or friends really get us. They do not want to hear about our thrifting trips over and over again. They don't want to hear about our finds. They don't want to hear about the display, or maybe you should have a different color, but you're not really sure. They don't want to hear about that. I mean, they'll, if they're good people, they'll humor you a little bit, but really, you can only put so much on them. So I encourage you to find some booth owner business friends. Also, I know I've mentioned it a lot, but I do have a group. So if you're looking for a little community where you can talk and share stuff, we do a lot of that in my group. And all of the information will be down below if you're interested. So I hope this has been helpful. Let me know if you're a new booth owner or an experienced booth owner. You've been doing this for a while. If you agree that that's one of the really big reasons, fear and overwhelm is what's stopping booth owners from doing what they need to do. I see a lot of new dealers that don't stick with it. And I seriously believe in my core that it's because they were just overthinking. They weren't doing as much as they needed to be doing because they were so worried and so afraid and so overthinking, like, should I have a logo and what color who cares? Just get your stuff in the booth, get selling. So I don't want you to be your worst enemy. I want you all to have a very successful business. Let me know if this was helpful here. I appreciate you all so very much. Also, please share this if you think this would be helpful for any other booth owners that you know. Thanks again for watching. Now get out there to salvage, repurpose, and create.